Before we start SQL, we'll have to start with a little bit of theory. Okay. So, how many of you have heard of the word database? Database. How many of you have heard of the word database? What is database? It is storage of what? Data, right? Okay. So, there are two broad terms when we talk about data. There is something called data and there is something called information. What is the difference between data and information? Yeah, what is the difference between data and information? Okay, data means raw collection of, it is a raw collection of data, facts and whatever. Whereas when you talk about information, it is some meaning associated with this particular data is called information. Okay, so you don't have to make any notes at the moment. Everything is recorded here. You can play it back. But at the moment, I want you to focus only on listening to the lecture. Okay. So, if at all you had a school, and you didn't even have a computer, you have to store the information of all the students. How would you store the information? Those who have already attended the class, don't answer. Those who have not, please answer. How would you store the information? In ledgers or some books and all that stuff, right? So, say your school has, each class has 30 or say 50 students, okay, and it has 3 sections and there are 12 classes altogether. Okay, so how would you maintain the books? For each section you'll have one book. How will you store the student information? For each section you'll have one book, or you'll have one book for all the students in all the classes. How would you store? Class-wise? Okay, one says class-wise. So how many books will be there? 12 into 3, 36 books. Any other ways of storing it? Would you all store it the same way, or would you use any other way? Okay. So, the school ran for first year. So, how many books have been collected? 36. The school ran for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. How many books will be there? 360 books. Fine. The school ran for 50 years. Then 1800 books will be there altogether. So will you store all 1800 books in one single drawer, or will you have a room for it? How will you store this information? Where will you store all the books? You'll have a room, right? So will you dump everything in a room, or will you have racks and then you'll say year 2000 there will be a rack, year 2001 there will be another rack. Okay? And even in this rack you'll say 10th, 9th, say 8th. So you'll have books in each row like this, right? Say after 100 years, some fellow lived for 100 years, okay? He came back to the school and asked you, can you give my my maths marks in 7th standard? What will you do? You will have to go to this particular room. You'll have to figure out in his 7th standard which year was it. Go to that particular rack and then go to that particular, whatever slot in that, and then take that book, go through the pages and give his marks. Yes? So you would need one fellow dedicated for this, just to do all this searching or storing information and all this stuff. See, all of a sudden you realize that this is very cumbersome. Okay, your books were being eaten away by termites, okay, and it was very cumbersome to maintain all this. So you decided, let me buy a computer. So you bought a computer. Okay, and then you said, let me store the information on this computer. So how would you store the information on the computer? You just bought a basic computer, nothing else. No other software. Folders. So folders is like racks. Okay. But where will you store the actual information? You need a file. Okay. So probably you will use a text file. Right? You'll use Notepad. And then how will you store the information in Notepad? Let me bring up Notepad for you. So, yeah. Because this is the most basic thing that you ever get with any computer. So in this, probably you will say year, okay, and then will you write like this? How will you store in Notepad if at all you had to store? Can somebody write on your, all of you write in your books, how would you store this information in a Notepad? What I want to store is, I want to store the name of the student, I want to store his class, and then maths, physics, chemistry marks, and I also want to store the year. How will you store this information in Notepad? Quick. Okay, how have you got the information? In the Notepad, just a sec. How would you store the information, lady? The year. So tell me, year after that? Year and class. Should I have a separator or no separator? Space? Space. Okay, year and then I'll use space. I'll say class. Okay. Name, math, physics, chemistry. Okay, so let me store some information. 2000 space, say 10 space. My name is Amit Sadat. Math 78, physics 38, chemistry 29. What is the problem here? What is the problem here? Year 2000 stands for year, class is 10th, name is Amit, maths is Sadat, physics is 78, chemistry is 39. What is 29 extra? What is the mistake here? The separator. The separator was space. Okay. So if your name had space in it, it can't be used as a separator. So probably you have to use separator like pipe, 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 okay. So now if you have pipe as a separator, any values that come between the pipes correspond to each column. Okay. Now, so this file is having year information also. So it means to say that if the school ran for about 100 years, we will have one single file which has all the 100 years and the same student marks for 100 years. I mean all the details of 100 years. Let's say somebody came and then they asked you, can you give my maths marks in the year 1968? How many records will you scan through? From 2000, say every year how many records will be there? Altogether 50 students, okay, 3 sections and 12 classes. So 3 into 12, 36 into 50, 180. So 180 records will be there for each year. So if you have to get the record for year 1978, how many records you have to come down? 180 into 12, okay, not 12, 22, and then somewhere see for that particular record. If somebody wanted 100 years before information, you would have to go to 1800 records or something below, or 18,000 records below, and then try to get that information. Now what is going to happen? This particular file is going to become very bulky. So what is the other way of storing this information? What is the other way of storing this information? We'll use the same files, but what we'll do is, we will create, we'll create a folder called student info. In that, I'll have year-wise information, 2000. I'll have something called 2001. Is that fine? So in this I'll have one file called student. How many records will be there at the most? 180 records. Okay? If you want, you can further simplify it. 180 or 1800, I think 1800. 1800 records will be there. If you want to further simplify it, in this you can say new and then have another folder called 10th, another folder called 9th, 7th, and then if you have files in it, each file will contain how many records? 150 records. Fine, for each section there will be like this. So what is it that we are trying to do? We are trying to simplify the way we store the data. Fine. Why are we simplifying the way we store the data? What is your whole aim? Why do you have data in the first place? Because you can retrieve it at any given point of time. Okay, you can update it or you can delete it. These are the actions that you will do with data, right? So what we are trying to do here, we are trying to simplify the way we store the information. What is the ultimate aim? For faster retrieval, faster insertion, faster updation and deletion. You getting my point? Let us take the classic example of your rough notes. Okay, when you go to a school or a college, right, you have something called your rough notes. What is the difference between your rough notes and your textbook? In a textbook everything is organized, whereas in a rough notes it's not organized. So what is the problem without being organized? Yeah, the data retrieval or the time taken to access the data takes more whenever it is not organized. So if at all you take your any textbook, right in the beginning there will be something called table of contents, right? There will be table of content, and then towards the end there will be something called index or glossary. I don't know what will be there towards the end. Index, right? So table of content will tell you that to search for this information you have to go to which page. Okay? But when you go to an index, there will be some word and then it will say it will be available in which pages. Okay? So why do we have that? We have that because we want to get to that particular information as soon as possible. Okay? Now, your telephone directory, is that a proper database or not? Yes, because it is first, if you say I want to search for a name that starts with S, you'll go to the first page, which is your table of contents, similar to table of content or an index. It will say SA to SB something will be in so and so page to so and so page. Okay, and it will be alphabetically arranged. Okay, so why are we doing all this? Just to ensure that we are able to retrieve the data faster. Okay, so you bought a computer, you stored your information in the form of some text files. Okay, now somebody has come and asked you, can you give my information? You will need some fellow who will go through all these folders, open the text file, and then go through your information and then give. Right? So you always need a fellow sitting here. Then you decided it is such a waste of time. You are a C programmer or a C++ programmer. And then you say, let me write one very simple program, console application, where if he enters the year and the name of the student, I will go open, I'll traverse through these folders, open that particular file, go through record by record, pick that information and then give it to him, right? So you will write a C program, very simple C program that does file input output operations. If you just give the year, it will open the particular folder, it will go to that particular class, open that text file, give the information. So what have you done? What is the C program all about? So what is your database at the moment? This folder with all this information is your database. This is your data storage. And the C program that you write to access this information is nothing but your management system, right? So both these things combined together is called your database management system. Okay? So you know C, you have Notepad, so you wrote your own database management system. Somebody else knew C++, somebody else knew Java, and then they thought instead of using Notepad we'll use Excel, okay, to store the information. We'll write our program in C++ or we'll write our program in Java, okay. They wrote their own program. So what is all this? Everybody is trying to create their own database management system, right? The program along with the place where you store is nothing but your database management system. So Microsoft, what it did, it created something called Microsoft SQL Server, okay. Oracle has created something called Oracle Database. There is IBM that created something called DB2. Okay? What did all these guys do? They created the same thing, but they thought their program was superior. They thought the way they store their files, they might not use 10 folders, they might use only one folder. It is their own logic. But what is the end result? They all are creating database management systems. Okay? So, whenever you talk about a database management system, first thing you need to understand is there should be a data store and there should be a service or an application that is running to take information from the data store and then give it to the end user. That is when it is called a database management system. Okay. Now you will hear this word called which of these words have you heard? RDBMS, ODBMS, okay, NHDBMS. So whenever I talk about, we'll talk about HDBMS first. It is called Hierarchical Database Management System, okay, where information is stored in the form of a tree. Say there is world has continents, say Asia, Africa, something like that, and continents have countries, okay, and countries have states, states have cities, and cities have people. So what is this? This is like a tree. I mean, it's an inverted tree, but if you actually see it the other way, this is the root, okay, and then these are the branches, and these are other branches, and finally there will be leaves, okay. So one way of storing information is in the form of hierarchy. We don't use this much, but there are hierarchical database management systems. You don't really have to worry about this. Next one is object-oriented database management systems, where all the information is stored in the form of some objects, like your C# classes, right? Or in C++ you write some classes and then they are converted into objects. So everything is stored in the form of some object, okay? There are very few companies that use object-oriented database management systems. Probably Google uses or some other companies use. Don't worry too much about ODBMS also. The last one is called the Relational Database Management System. This is used approximately 80% in the world. Okay, this is what all of us will be following. Whenever I say relation means it is like a table. Okay, all the information is stored in the form of tables. Okay, so what do you mean by a table? Table contains rows and columns. So if there is a table called student, there will be a column called student ID, student name, math, physics, chemistry, and then there will be rows in it which actually contain the actual information, like student ID 1, name Sadat, math 70, 80, something like that. Okay, and then there will be multiple tables. Say there is one student, there is a course table, and then a student can register in a course. So there has to be another table that is describing the relationship between the student and the course, saying one student has taken so and so course. So wherever the information is stored in the form of in the form of tables, it is called relational database management system. There are all these whatever I'm talking about: Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, okay, Sybase. All these are nothing but relational database management systems, and we'll be focusing only on SQL Server. Is that clear till here? See, at least you should understand what is the database first. Okay, what is the problem in having unorganized data? Why we have to organize data? Okay, and if at all you had to create a database or install a database, what you need to do? Okay, so the very first step, we'll be learning how to use SQL Server. Now, you bought a machine, and then this only has Windows operating system on it. Okay, this only has Windows operating system on it, and you want it to be your database server. I want this machine to become my database server. If I want this machine to become my database server, can it just become a database server without installing the database service on it? So what I have to do is, I first have to buy some software from Microsoft, which is called your SQL Server. You run that SQL Server installer on it, so it will install Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, so the software that is required is the internet working? If at all you have to install it at your home, what you'll have to do is search for MS SQL Server 2005 Express Edition. Okay, so MS SQL, when I say Express Edition, it is a lightweight version that can be installed on your individual desktops. If you say server, then it is far bigger. Okay, so we'll use just the Express Edition for the time being, because it provides everything what we need. So search for Microsoft SQL Server Express Edition. So when you go to this particular file, this particular web page, there are two things to it. One, the core database engine. The other one is some visual tool to talk to the database engine. Okay, one is the core engine, that the core service that will be running, that will provide your database service, and the other thing is the visual tool. Say if you have to talk to the service, you need to have some interface, user interface. What is the difference between DOS and Windows? Which one is easier to use? Windows, right? But both are operating systems. DOS is CUI based, whereas Windows is GUI based. But the core operating system service is the same. Okay? So there will be SQL Server that will be running, and then there will be your some tool called Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. I'll show both of these things. So what you'll have to do, if you just download SQL Server 2005 Express Edition SP3, it will just install the service, database service. But if you download Express Edition with advanced services and with the toolkit and all that stuff, right? I'll tell you, there should be something here that says, if you say the advanced services, it should give you one of the options as client tools or management studio or something like that. You should check that particular stuff and also install. Okay. Whenever you install the service, you will have to go to services, services dot msc, Microsoft command. It will open services. Here you should see first something called SQL Server Express Edition. Okay, and this should be in started. Only then it means that the core database engine is running on your machine. Okay, if this is not running, it means to say that your machine is not a database server because it does not have your database service running. Next, you will always hear this word called server and client. Okay, in big corporates or in big enterprises, what they'll do, they'll have one main machine on which this service will be running. Okay, and all the other computers, they'll have just the front end or the visual tool, which is called the client tool. They all will connect to this particular database server and then run it. But if you are using Express Edition, what you actually do is you run the SQL Server service and also the client tool on your local machine. Okay. So once you install the client tool, there are a few seniors here who already installed. You can ask them. Once you install, go to Start, go to All Programs. You will see Microsoft SQL Server 2005. Expand it. You should see something called SQL Server Management Studio Express. What is this? This is nothing but your client tool to talk to your database. Okay, go there, or once you open it, it will be available anywhere here. So SQL Server Management Studio Express. Now, whenever you open this, you have to connect to some database server to work with, wherever the SQL engine is running. So, whenever you install your SQL Server, you will have to give some name to it. That will be the name of the server. The name of the server is CXU003-PC, which is nothing but the name of this particular computer, backward slash SQL Express. That is the name of the database server now. And then what I say, so can you connect to any machine, or you need to have user ID and password? You need to have a user ID and password. But where is this server? It is on the same machine. Okay? And once I log into this machine, I don't really need to use a separate user ID and password. I'll use something called Windows Authentication, and I'll try to connect. There are other ways. You can say SQL Server Authentication. We'll come to this a little later. But first we'll use Windows Authentication and then just say connect. So when you connect, on one server there can be multiple databases. Okay, say there is a school. What are the various databases that can be there in a school? Student database, faculty database, okay, and then sports database, or say library database. Okay, there can be multiple databases. So for each database, will they have one server, or they'll have one server that can contain multiple databases? There can be one server that can contain multiple databases. So that is exactly what we are trying to do here. Okay. So once I connect to the database server, on the left hand side you will see something called the Object Explorer. On the left hand side you will see something called the Object Explorer. This one is used to see through all the objects that are present on the database server. Lose it by closing it. How do you get it back? Go to View and then say Object Explorer. Okay, and then if for some reason you disconnect, how do you disconnect? There is a small cross button, disconnect. You want to connect it back again, click on the button next to it and then give the name of the server, Windows Authentication, connect it. Now, whenever you expand databases, initially there will be something called system databases. Okay. So in the system databases, there will be something called master, there will be model, MSDB, and then MDB. Whenever I say master database, okay, this is something that is used by the database server. This is a master database that contains information about all the objects that are there on the database server. If you create another database, even that information will be in this particular master database. So never fiddle around with the system master database, because that is the main database. If you screw up with this database, it means your entire database server is gone. Okay? The master database contains information about all the other databases that you create. Okay? So if at all I have to create a new database, what I'll do, right click on the databases, just a new database, give a name to it. I'll call it as SDB, the student database. Okay? And then observe here that it says database name is SDB. Forget about the owner at the moment. You can see something called database files. Database files, and there are two kinds of files here. File type is data, the other one is log. Okay? And the file group is primary. So what do you think these are? If at all you created your own database, you stored your student information in some text files, right? You stored all the student information in the text files. That is where the final data was residing. Okay? So Microsoft uses these two files to finally store the actual information of the students that you enter. Okay? In this there are two kinds of files. First one is called the primary data file, or it is called the master data file, and the other one is called the log data file. Okay? Master data file contains the actual information, whereas log data file contains information about, say, you entered a student and then you deleted by mistake and you wanted to retrieve the information back. Okay? So there will be a log file in which it will maintain that, so and so student was inserted, so and so student was deleted. If the information is not there in the log, you can't retrieve the information. Okay? So whenever you talk about databases, there will be whenever you talk about database files, right, there will be something called primary data file. This will have an extension of .mdf. Okay? You can call it as studentdb.mdf. And then there will be something called log data file. This will also be called stb_log.ldf, log data file. Okay? I told you, right, if at all you had to store all the student information in one single file, the file would become very heavy. So what was the solution? You wanted to split the file in different smaller files. Okay? So if at all you think that your primary data file has become 1 GB or say 10 MB, it is too huge to load. So what it will do, it will split it into something called secondary data file, and it is called .nds. Okay? So there is a primary file, there is a secondary data file, and then there is a log data file. Where is the information actually stored? Either in the primary or in the secondary. What is there in the log file? Only the transaction information. Okay? It only stores the history of the activities that are done. It does not store actual information. Now if at all I say here and then I go back and then say add, I'll call it as SDB1. So what do you think is this file? There can only be one MDF file. There can be multiple NDF files. Okay? So just a second. Yeah, you were asking something. MDF is, I think it is main or master data file. LDF is log data file. I don't know what is NDF. Okay. Did somebody find out what is NDF? Did you find out what is the full form of .NDF? Okay, find it out on the net. What is the full form of .NDF? Okay, so I just say, if I say okay, so what? Okay, I did a mistake here. What I have to do is, whenever you are launching with Windows 7 and above, whenever you are launching SQL Server Management Studio, right click and then say run as administrator. Okay, because you need to be an administrator of that particular service. So now say connect, databases, right click on databases, say new database, I call it as SDB. I'll also add another STB1. Okay, so this should be my secondary file. We'll see where these files are actually stored. Okay, I'll just say okay. So what is happening? It has created my database called SDB. Okay. Now, I want to see where exactly it has stored all these files. I am pasting the location here and then say, if you see right, it stores in C program files, Microsoft SQL Server, MS SQL, MS SQL, data. What can you see here? You can see something called SDB. Okay, it says primary data file. It says SDB underscore log. What is it? It is transaction log file. It says SDB1, which is my secondary data file. Okay, so where is your final information residing? In these three files. Log has the transaction information, but SDB and SDB1 have your main information. Now tomorrow, say your system crashed or something. Okay, as long as these files are existing, will you be able to get back your information? Because they contain the information. Now we want to take the database information from one computer to another computer. Okay, what is the thing that you will copy? Only these three files. Take it on that particular machine, just dump it in one particular folder and use your management studio to operate with them. Okay, what you can do, sometimes you can just say attach. Okay, when you say attach, what does it ask for? It asks for the MDF files. All you can say is take one MDF file, select it and then say OK. Now that will be available in your databases here. Is that clear? If at all you take the database files from one machine to another machine, okay, all you have to do is, you don't have to recreate the database there. Just right click and then say attach, say add, go to that location wherever you have copied that MDF file, select that MDF file and then say OK and then say OK. What is going to happen? It will be now available in your management studio there. Clear? Now once you have created your database, what is the next step? We need to create something called tables. Because you don't directly store information in the database, you store information in the form of tables. Okay, so expand your database. There are different objects in it. There is something called tables. So right click on the first, expand if there are any tables. There will be some system tables. That is not of much significance here. Right click and then say new table. What is the table I want to create? I want to create something called student table. Okay, so there will be something called student ID, student name, maths, physics, chemistry, and then probably degree also. Okay, so I'll say student ID. Whenever you're defining a table, what do you define first? The columns or the rows? What is the structure of the table? Row belongs to the structure or column belongs to the structure? Row or column? Column, right? So column belongs to the structure of the table. So if at all we are defining a table, what should we define first? We are supposed to define the column names. Okay? So whenever I say student ID, that's my first column name. You have to specify what is the data type. In my case, student ID will be integer. Just say integer. Can a student ID be null? No, right? So just say allow nulls as no. Next one is student name. Is student name integer or character data? Character, right? So instead of using something called char, I'll use something called varchar, say 50. There is a difference between char and varchar. Whenever I say char, it will allocate 50 characters for me, okay, in the memory. But whenever I say varchar, it will allocate up to 50 characters. Okay? So if at all your name was only 4 characters long, it will not unnecessarily waste 50 characters for you. It will only use 4 characters. But at any given point of time, your name cannot exceed 50 characters. It can't store more than 50 characters. So you have to choose whether you wanted varchar 50, varchar 100, anything. So I'll use varchar and then I'll say, can name be null? No. Degree, I'll say varchar of 50. Allow nulls? No. Maths, integer, I'll allow nulls because I'm not sure if I have the values right in the beginning. Okay? So this is the structure of my table. And then all I'll do is I'll say save. What is the name of the table? Student. Never write table names like students. Okay? It should always be singular. Table name should usually be singular. And I prefer proper naming conventions. I want S to be capital. Okay? If you have observed all the names that I have given here, every column name starts with a capital letter. And if you see student ID, student is one word, ID is next word. I did not give any space in between. I started it with capital. Okay? I have saved the table called student. Now close it. Right click and then say open table. So what can you see? You can see the table called student. Are there any rows in it? No rows in it, right? So I need to enter the information. So I'll say student ID 1 Sadat B 65. Now if at all you write like this, okay, you've entered, so it says it is showing all these red marks, which means to say that there has been a change in it. You have to go to the next row and then say execute. Okay, only then it will be saved. If you write like this 2 okay. If I leave like this, most of you for the very first time when you don't know, you'll just say execute. Then what will happen? The row whatever you made a change will go away. So please ensure that you say 2 Vasu say BCA. Go to the next row and then say execute. That is when it will be saved. Is that clear? Yeah. So which one? It is showing as null. ID and name? No. Initially this is a blank row. Only when you enter. Now what I'll do is I gave student ID as do not allow nulls. Okay, so I'll leave this as null here and then I'll say maths, physics, chemistry, I can leave null. Let me go to the next row. It says no row was updated. Why? Because student ID does not allow nulls. Insert cannot be done. Okay, so it will take care at the time of runtime. So I go here and then I say clear till here. Next, whatever I am doing, it is very easy like this. Okay, if you do it like this, there is no point in even coming here to learn. Okay, you are considered a smart programmer provided you know how to write queries to do all this. Okay, so what I'll show you is there is something called the query analyzer, or click on this new query. Click on this new query. I want to create a database. Okay, I want to create a database. So if I have to create a database, I should first be in the master database. Okay, because master database contains information of all the other databases. So if at all I have to create a database, I'll say create database. I'll call it as, give the database name as say SDB1, some new database. Okay. Why is this? Is this better? You can see or no? Or should I make it bold as well? Any better? Okay, I said create database name. All you'll do is, whenever you write any queries, click on, there is a tick mark here. Click on that. What does it do? It checks whether the statement is syntactically correct or not. Okay, and the next one is execute. Okay, first one is to check, this one is to execute. Directly you can click on execute, even then it will first check the syntax and then execute. So it says command completed successfully. Now it must have created the database, right? But it is not visible here. It is because it is not refreshed. Select databases. There is a small refresh button here on the top. Just click on it. You see that it is created. Okay. If at all we use the UI wizard to create database, we saw that we had to specify the primary file name, secondary file name, and all that stuff, right? But while doing that, we did not do it here. Okay. So the syntax must be much more than this. I'll show you what will the actual syntax be. The syntax will be something like this. Create database. Name of the database is put in square brackets. Why? Because sometimes, what is SQL? SQL is like simple English, right? It's a 4th generation language where it is like simple English. So if at all the syntax was something like create, say, database, name of the database you wanted to write as something called student space DB. Okay, what is it expecting? First word create, after that space database. After that it is expecting the name of the database. Okay, but since you entered space here, it is assuming that this is the name of the database, and after that this is some keyword. Okay, so you have to tell that no, this is one single word. For that you'll have to put something called square brackets. Okay, so any space that you write in between will be there within the square brackets. It assumes that this is one single word. Okay, on primary is the primary file system. Okay, and then it is saying bracket begins, name is equals to SDB1. What is SDB1? This is the name of the primary file, primary data file. You can see the file name, the location, C program files, Microsoft SQL Server, SDB1.mdf. And then it is saying, what is the size? Initial size is 1 MB, a little more, less than 1 MB or more than 1 MB, I don't know. And then maximum size it is saying unlimited, means it can grow to any size. And then it is saying file growth as 1 MB. So if at all you are creating the data file, will you directly create 100 GB file, even if you are going to store only 10 MB information? No, right? You will first create a 1 MB file. As and when it is growing to 1 MB, you will say increase the file size. After that, increase the file size. That is nothing but your file growth. How much do you increase your file by? The moment it becomes 1 MB, increase it by another MB. Okay? And here you will say log on and then name of the log file. And then you see something called collate SQL Latin General CP1 CIAS. Don't worry about what is collation, okay? Because when you talk about collation, right, this particular database, does it only contain English information? Information in English? Yes? At the moment, yes. Say French. Those fellows don't know English at all. How will they be able to use this particular database? They'll store information in French, right? Say Spanish or say the Indian languages. We need to be able to store information in our own languages. Okay? So for that, the collation has to be, instead of SQL Latin, it has to be something called Unicode, okay, or French, or Hindi, or German, or something, where it will understand that the data that is going inside that particular database is a foreign language. It is not English. Clear? So you should know how to create database using the create database syntax. Okay? You should know how to create the database using the new database wizard. Okay? So whenever you create a database, you should be in master database here. Okay? So we have created the master database. We have created the what do you call, SDB1. Now in this database, I want to create tables. So you can right click and then say new table, or you can say new query. Please ensure that now you are in the database SDB1. Whenever you are creating tables or stored procedures, anything, you have to be in the right database. You can just say create table, name of the table, student, create table, table name. What will be the columns in it? You'll have to say student ID. It is integer. Is it null or not null? Not null. Next column, student name, varchar of 50, not null. Then maths, integer. If you don't write anything, it will assume that it is allowed nulls. Physics, integer, chemistry, integer. So what did I say? I said create table, name of the table, and then I am giving column name, student ID, name, maths, physics, chemistry, and then I am saying execute. Okay? So what must it have done? Must have created a table here. It's not shown, just say refresh. Okay? If at all by mistake, by default it will always be pointing to master. If you say like this and then say execute, right? Where is this table created now? It will be in master. Here. But you're not supposed to create here. Just delete it. Yeah. Because I'm the administrator of this particular server, when I logged in as the administrator of this particular server. So I can manipulate the master database. But you're not supposed to do that. Okay? Till here it is clear, everybody? How to create database, how to create a table. There are two ways of creating database. One, using the new database. The other one, using the create database name, and then open brackets, name, the file location, that should be MDF, file size, file growth and all that stuff, log file details. Okay? Creating table is of two ways, either using the new table wizard or create table name. I will not be happy if you just know how to create table using this. I'll be asking questions then how to create table using the create table syntax. Okay? So you should be able to create tables using this particular syntax. Next, once you create a table, I showed you how to enter information, right? Using the right click on the table and then say open table and then do it. The alternative way to, enter information in a table is, what you have to say? You have to say insert into which table? Student. In which columns you want to insert? Student ID. Here was there degree also or no? I didn't mention degree here. Okay. Math, chemistry, close the brackets there, and then what do you want to insert? Values, student ID, is it integer or integer, right? Can I write integer like this? Is it an integer or is it a character? It's a character. Is it an integer or a character? This is an integer. Okay. Whenever you put in single quotes, it becomes a character. Okay. Sadat, maths, physics, chemistry, 78. Okay. Inserted. Now I want to see what is the information in the table. I'll say select star from student. Just select this particular thing. How do you choose this particular thing? If you are towards the end, say shift and then say home. Okay. You should know how to use the keyboard well. Okay. Everybody should know how to type with both the hands. Nobody should look at the keyboard and type. If you don't know typing, sit and practice typing. Not on my computers. Okay. Don't scrub the keyboard. Go somewhere, learn typing. Please ensure that you know typing well. Okay, so select start from student. You execute. What do you get here? You say 1 Sadat 78 something. Okay. Clear till here? Now say you created the table. You created the table and then you realize that you did a mistake in the structure of the table. Okay. So you have to alter the structure of the table, not the content, the structure. So what do you do? Right click and then say modify. What mistake I did? I said varchar instead of varchar 50. I wanted to make it as varchar 100. So I saved it. So now what did I do? I altered the structure of that particular table. What kind of alteration did I did? I altered a column called student name, where the data type from varchar 50 I made it to varchar 100. Okay. This is one kind of alteration. The other kind of alteration can be, I want to change the data type from integer to decimal. Okay. What was the first alteration? First alteration was changing the length of the data type. Second alteration, changing the data type itself. Third alteration, the constraint is here, right? Allow nulls or something. I want to make not null to null or null to not null. That is another kind of alteration. The fourth alteration is, I want to add another column. I want to add another column. The fifth alteration is I want to delete an existing column. Okay. The seventh alteration is I want to change the name of the column. From chemistry, I want to call it as chem. Okay. These are the possible alterations that I can think of. Okay. It is very easy to do all that using the wizard. Okay. But if at all you had to write using queries, how would you do? Say alter table student. Okay. What I want to say? I say alter column and then column name. What I want to say? I want to my first condition is I want to alter student name from varchar 100. Now it is varchar 100. I want to make it back varchar 50. I'll say varchar, I'll say varchar 50, not null. That is it. Come back here. I mean, this one will still be holding the previous one. Just right click and then say modify. What is it now? It has come back to varchar 50. That is the first alteration. The second alteration can be SQL is not case sensitive, okay, but I am case sensitive. Okay, so I expect that everybody follows proper case sensitivity. Okay, I don't like bad style of writing SQL queries. Okay, so alter column. What is the next one? Maths. From integer I want to just make it decimal. So I'll just say alter maths decimal and then say just leave it like that. So right click and then say modify. Maths has become decimal. For a decimal, right, there will be something called scale and precision. Right? Have you heard of these things? What is the difference between integer and decimal? Decimal can have, after a point there can be some other values. I mean, so I think that is the precision or scale. I don't know what it is. For an integer you can't have point values after that. So that is what you need to find out. Okay. Next, we have changed the data type itself here. The next one, I wanted to make some not null to null or something like that. So I'll say alter table student, alter column, student name, varchar 50, I'll say null. Okay. So what will happen now? Student name column will allow nulls. Which one is the possibility? Allowing not null to null or allowing null to not null? Which one is? Ideally speaking, both should be possible. Okay. Say you created a house. Okay. You created a house and then it was empty initially. Okay. You had to break the ceiling. Can you break the ceiling? No, it is empty initially. Your house, you want to break the ceiling. Can you break it? Yes. Okay. Now you have a tenant. Okay, now you want to break the ceiling. What do you have to do? You first have to ensure that he vacates and then you break the ceiling. Okay. So, in a table, it is very easy to make a not null column to null. Okay. You can make a not null column to null. But making a null column to not null, you first have to check whether there is any null information already existing. Okay. Say there is maths column. There are two rows with values. The third row does not have value in the maths column. After all this, you said change the structure from null to not null. So you change the structure from null to not null. What will happen to the third row in which there is a null value? It will not permit, right? So that's the reason whenever you are saying not null to null, you first have to ensure that there is no null information in that particular column. Did you guys understand? Venkat Reddy, how many of you are sleeping in the class, keeping your eyes wide open? Okay, so this is one. What is the next one? Null to not null is over, or not null to null, that is fine. Changing the data type, okay. Changing the data length. Okay, the next one is column name. This is the most important one. I want to say alter table Okay. Okay, so now you want to change the name of the column. So you say alter table student, alter column. See, I mean, we want to change the name of the column. So when we want to change the name of the column, can I say student name to S name? Doesn't sound good. Okay, because the column name is the handle which we have to change. Okay, I can't hold you and say I want to change you. I first have to release you, and then somebody else has to change you and I have to hold you. So for that, whenever you are changing the name of the column, you have to use something called sp underscore rename. What is it? sp underscore rename table dot student dot student name. What is the column name here? Student name. To which one? To the new? I'll just call it as. Okay. And then say execute. It says changing any part of an object name could break scripts and associate stored procedures. Just say yes, don't worry about it. So let me see, what is the name of the column now? It is S name. Okay. This is only one special case where when you are changing the name of the column you have to use sp underscore rename. sp underscore rename is nothing but a stored procedure. We'll come to it what it is later. Okay. Is that fine? And the other thing is, if I want to drop a column called chemistry, all I'll say is alter table student drop column chemistry. Okay, I'm not going to drop it. Now if I want to add a new column, I'll say if alter table student add column. So I want to add degree here, degree var 50, not null. Is that fine? Now if I'm adding a new column and I'm saying not null, will it add at the moment? How many rows are there already? 3 rows. Oh, one is only there. What happened to this? Oh, here we inserted. Okay, there is only 1 row. Okay. Now if you want to add another column, degree, and I am saying column has to be not null, will it add? How many of you say yes? How many of you say no? Yes, how many of you? Raise your hands, you have to take a stance. Yes, will it add? No. Aditya, you seem to be lost. What happened to you? From the time you went to Hyderabad and came back, you seem to be lost. Are you studying? Okay. So can I add a new column called degree here? If I add a new column called degree here and I say not null, okay, it will add a column, but for this row the value will be null. So it is not possible like that. So there should not be any information, and then you can add not null column. Let me try to add, I'll show it to you. See, programming is all about thinking about odd scenarios. Okay, trying to do all the good scenarios is not programming. You should know special cases where it will fail. So I'll say execute. It says, should I say add column or should I just say add degree? Okay, alter table allows columns to be added that can contain nulls or have a default definition. Okay, so right now if I say not null and if I say execute, it's saying it's not possible. If I say null, then it is possible. Or I can say not null and then I can say default. I'm saying B. Now it is added. Why? Let me go back to this and then say open table and then say, let me run it. Where did it add? Refresh. Okay, it says degree and by default it is giving a value called B. Okay, so we have seen a new thing called default here. Okay, how you can add default? Whenever you are creating a table, say create table student and then you say student ID integer not null, student name varchar say just 50 not null. I say degree varchar of 50 and then I say null and I say default, I say B. What is going to happen? If at all the user does not enter any information for degree, it will take B by default. Okay, you can do it like this or go to modify, select the name of the column, below you will see something called column properties. There is something called default value or binding. You can make it B or BCA. It is a varchar, so you put it in single quotes. If it all is an integer, you just give some default integer value. Okay, so if you don't enter any information, what is going to happen? BCA will come through. I'll say allow nulls and I save. Let me show it to you from here. To Ullas. I am not entering anything in that particular column. I am going to the next row. Okay, let me execute now. It is added BCA. Okay, that is one. Now the last one for today is student ID 1, 2, whatever. Okay, I am going to enter can there be two students with the same ID? But it is allowing. Okay, first thing we will see how to avoid it from allowing us. Okay, the other thing is I don't want to go through the pain of giving the student ID always. Okay, I don't want to go through the pain of giving the student ID. It should automatically generate. Okay, in such cases let me delete this particular row. Okay, what will you do? Right click on the table, go to modify, select student ID and then say there is something called identity specification. Just say yes. Come here and then double click on it or just select this and then say yes. Then there is something called identity seed and identity increment. What is seed value? Starting point. What is increment? The next, how much you have to do. If the seed is 10 and increment is 10, what is the first value? Next value? I said seed is 10 and increment is 10. What is the next value? 20. What is the next value? 30. If I say the seed is 0 and the increment is 1, what is the first value? Okay, this value is 0 and the next one is 1. Okay, so that is what we are doing here. We are setting the seed and the increment. So if I say save it, close it, the open table. So you can see there is a slight color change here. Okay, it is not enabled for you. Why? Because you have told that the SQL server has to give the value. So I am saying, can I try to enter some value here? No, it's not letting me do anything. Okay, so whenever you give a default value, right? If you don't give anything, it will give the default. If you give your own value, it will take your value. So I go to the next one. So what has happened? It has automatically given the next value as 3. Okay. So identity I have shown you how to do it there. If at all you had to write identity here, every identity column should definitely be not null. Every identity column should definitely be not null. So I'll say identity brackets. Let's say 10 comma 10. Which one is the seed and which one is the increment? First one is the seed, the next one should be the increment. Okay. Even if I want to alter, I can write all these. So whatever you are saying, this not null, this identity, okay, default, all these are called constraints. What are these called? Constraints. Constraints. Okay. What do you understand by word constraint? Restriction. Okay. Why? Because, so why do we have restrictions in the first place? Why do we need restrictions on a database, on a database table? To ensure that the data is consistent, okay, or the data has some integrity. Means you are ensuring that the data has the right set of values. Okay, that is what is called, to ensure. There is a word called data integrity. Okay, so whenever I talk about the word integrity, there are 3 rules here. What is it? Entity integrity, referential integrity, and then domain integrity. You need to understand all these 3 concepts. Okay. For tomorrow, you will have to read all these topics. First, you should know how to create database. You should know what is MDF, LDF, NDF. Okay. You should know how to create table. You should know what is not null. What is varchar? You should know all the data types. You should know what is nvarchar. Find out what is nvarchar. Okay. And then you should know what is identity. You should know what is default. You should know how to alter table. Okay, when I say alter table, you should know how to modify column data types. You should know how to modify column for not null and null. Okay, you should know how to um, rename a column, how to add a new column, how to drop an existing column. Okay, you should know how to drop a table. You should know how to drop a database. Everything has to be known in two ways. One, using the management studio, the tool UI. The other one, using the queries. I am not interested whether you know using the management studio or not, but I am very much interested whether you know the queries or not. Okay? If you don't answer, you'll be receiving tomorrow properly. All this while I have not been strict with people. I haven't asked any questions, but from tomorrow on I'm going to ask questions. Okay? It should be there on your fingertips. If I ask you, give me the syntax for creating a table, the answer should be like, say sir, you have a table called student, in which there is student ID which is varchar 50, student name which is, student ID which is integer, student name that is varchar 50, math, physics, chemistry. You should tell me the structure of the table first, and then you should give the syntax saying create table, student, bracket begins, student name, student ID, integer, not null, identity of something, comma, student name, varchar of 50, not null, math, integer, physics, integer, chemistry, integer, close brackets. Okay? This is how you should be able to answer. I don't want anybody to give me some vague syntax and all that stuff. It should be there on your fingertips. You should be able to tell what it is. Okay? And then you will read, in addition to this, you will read Everybody has noted down all this? Data integrity. You have to read from the net. There are no books available for all this. Everything is there on the net. One is entity integrity, referential integrity, and then domain integrity. This will be something called your primary key. How to do it is by using primary key. This is by using foreign key, and this is check constraints, rules. Okay. Then the other topics that you have to know is ER diagram. What is an entity? ER means entity relationship diagram. Okay. So there are different kinds of relationships. Entities will be like this with some attributes and some underline in case of primary key, and then there will be one to many, or many to one, or many to many, or one to one. Okay. You should know what are all these. Okay. And then the other thing is made a note of all this, everybody? We'll be finishing SQL within 1 week. Okay, so don't fool around with SQL. This is your base. Okay, database management is your base. Most of my students get jobs based on their strength in databases. Okay, we are supposed to be very, very good at database. We are supposed to be very good at SQL, stored procedures, functions. Okay, you should be able to beat anybody else all across India with your strength in database knowledge. Okay, so don't fool around with SQL Server. This is the heart for everything. Next, you have to understand what is the candidate key, say the primary key, alternate key, surrogate key, super key, what else are there? Composite key, surrogate key, composite key, prime super key, and then there is something called foreign key. Okay? Composite key, surrogate key, foreign key. Okay? All these you have to finish by end of the day today, and then tomorrow you have to be ready with all this. It is too little. I mean, I think you should be able to finish everything within 2 hours. It won't take more than that. Okay? No sleeping in the night. I care a damn whether you sleep or you don't sleep. Okay? We can't waste time. We are done with all the fun, whatever you guys had here. I'm not interested whether people sleep or you take rest, or you have time to eat food, or you don't have time to eat food. All these have to be done by tomorrow. First 10 minutes we'll only find out how much you guys have read, and then we'll move into the class. I'll just take a small break, and then we'll be doing ASP.NET. Or you have 20 minutes to go have breakfast and come. Hey, the new guys, if you don't want to simple ASP.NET, you don't need to order SQL, C# and ASP.NET. Okay? If you want to sit through, you're welcome to sit through. But you want, I mean, no, it's possible. Don't know, it's not so tough. Okay, IS server is installed on all the machines. Yeah, you should be able to practice. Give me one question to practice for some time. You have your machine. I'll just do it. You can sit there, practice. Otherwise, we'll arrange for it. Just down. No expense here. XML, BDM. तो ये क्या चले गए हैं? So you can sit there and just close कर देना है. ऐसा वो रिकॉर्ड होता है ऐसा भी.